Hello, Rebels, and welcome to episode 7 of the Rebel and Reawaken podcast. This podcast is a place for us to rebel against what others say our journey is supposed to look like and reawaken our mind, body, and soul to cultivate an abundantly fulfilling life. This podcast is geared towards people in recovery from drugs and alcohol or behaviors, but anyone can benefit from listening to the stories and advice given here. I'm so glad you have set aside some time to spend with me today. Today's episode, we are going to expand on the concept of building a toolbox for when change gets hard. If you have not listened to the last 2 episodes, I encourage you to do that. In those episodes, we discuss using positive affirmations as a tool to help when you're ready to toss in the towel and give up on the changes that you're trying to make. Today, we are going to talk about another technique that you can use when change gets tough. So this technique is called playing the tape out. I've talked about it in the Rebel VIP membership. I've talked about it on Instagram. It's one of my favorite techniques, and I feel like it's one of the most effective techniques because it can be applied to any change that you're trying to make in your life. Like I said before, this is not just for people who are in recovery for drugs and alcohol, or maybe you've been in recovery so long that you're not trying to stay clean every day. That's not top of mind. You're trying to implement new healthy lifestyles. Maybe you're trying to work out. You're trying to eat healthier, trying to save money. Maybe you're trying to go back to school. Whatever the case may be. Before we go any further, though, I'm going to stop and have an Auntie Teresa moment right here. I get told by my clients all the time, I don't like you very much right now when I say things that they don't want to hear. So this is me acknowledging that you're not going to like me for the next few minutes, and that's okay. But if your reason for making change is because someone else wants you to, or because I'm required to because of fill in the blank, then I want to tell you that until you're making the changes for you, then the weight of change will become so strong that you will most likely give up. In order to achieve lasting change, it must be because you want to make the change. You have to be doing it for you and because you're ready to make the change. So until that's true, you aren't doing anyone any favors. You're giving people false hope. And sadly, you're most likely going to let them down. And when you do let them down, you're most likely going to find yourself in yet another shame spiral and even further down the road of destruction than you were before. I know that will probably make some people mad, and you may not agree with me, but in my professional and personal experience, I know this is true. So many people set out to make changes in their lives because their family has threatened to cut them off or their spouses have threatened divorce if something doesn't change, only to fail because they haven't gotten to the point where they see that they have a problem. Again, this can apply to being overweight. It can apply to spending too much money. It can apply to not helping your wife around the house, not helping your husband take care of the lawn. Like, it can be anything. But until you see that you have a problem and you're ready to make a change because you're ready to make a change, lasting change is going to be very difficult. So until you get to a place of total surrender to the fact that you need to make a change, lasting change will not occur. You might get temporary progress or temporary change, but true lasting change that's going to last a lifetime will not occur until you are the reason, you are the catalyst for the change in your own life. So if you're in this group and you're trying to make changes for someone else, I still invite you to listen. We'll go through an exercise that I hope will help you see the depths of the effects of your actions on yourself and those that you love. So don't give up. Don't stop listening. Let's go through this together. Okay, so whether you're trying to stop drinking, using drugs, partaking in problem behaviors, or you're trying to lose weight, save money, eat healthier, exercise more, finish school, read more books, whatever it is, the fact of the matter is change is hard. It is so hard to keep making the sacrifices and to put our selfish desires for a quick fix last, and our responsibilities required to make change first. It is so hard to do that. Trust me, I get it. No matter what changes you're trying to make, your brain is going to crave homeostasis, meaning your brain will fight you and try to keep things the way that they are. Change is hard, and your brain naturally chooses the path of least resistance. Mind blown, right? I have seen this exact thing happen in my own life when I tried to stop doing drugs, alcohol, when I started running and working out. Anytime I've tried to go keto or low carb, when I was studying my life away in undergrad and grad school, when I was trying to save money or trying to commit myself to reading my Bible every day, I've seen it all. Like every time I try to make change, this happens to me. So sitting on the sofa with a bowl of popcorn and binge watching Netflix always sounds better, always, than going for a run. So when I have an incredibly stressful day, not so much anymore now that I'm almost 2 years sober. Yay! I'm 11 months a year and 11 months sober. So it's not so much of a temptation anymore. But when I was first sober from alcohol and I had a super stressful day, 6 glasses of wine. Let me say, I'd start with 1. I'd say, okay, I'm going to have a glass of wine. And before I knew it, there were like 6. The bottle was empty and I was tempted to open another bottle. That sounded way better than having to sit with my feelings and process why I was feeling so stressed and actually figure out if I was the cause of my stress. Yeah, I know. That doesn't sound like fun. No, not at all. Sitting outside with a glass of wine and not thinking about it, that sounds like fun. I digress. So when I first stopped using meth, I was 19 years old. But physically and emotionally and mentally, I was 16 years old because that was the age when I started self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. So if you've been to rehab or done any sort of drug treatment, alcohol treatment, anything, quit lit, whatever, they always talk about how you are emotionally and mentally the same age as when you first started using. So for me, that was 16. So I was this 19-year-old with the mental capacity of a 16-year-old, and I was taking care of my friend's roommate's son full-time. I had essentially gone from drug addict to full-time mama overnight. He was this rambunctious 3-year-old that had never really had any structure in his life. He spent most of his life hopping around from grandma, aunts, uncles, running amok in his trailer park neighborhood, and generally just living like one of the lost boys from Peter Pan. That's literally what he reminded me of. He ate cold weenies and ramen. If there was nobody to make his ramen, he'd just crack it up and eat it raw. He didn't have a bedtime routine. All of my suburban mamas are cringing right now. He didn't have a morning routine. He fought me every time I tried to get him to brush his teeth. He did not like brushing his teeth. There weren't any rules for what he would wear. So he went out in his Superman PJs a lot, his Spider-Man PJs, and he would fight me if I tried to put him in regular clothes. He was a wild child. I, on the other hand, had grown up with a dad who was strict. Like all caps, bold, italics, strict. Kids were to be seen and not heard. And even better if they weren't seen. We never talked back. We never would have said no to an adult, like never. Our clothes had to look pristine, put together, unstained, undirty all the time. My fingernails, I've always had really long fingernails, and so he would threaten to chop them off if I didn't keep them clean. My dad was just really strict, and we had a lot of rules. All he had to do was snap and point his finger, and we were immediately at attention. Like, he was that commanding of respect from us. And so, yeah, like I remember, like, if you ever said something was nasty or gross about your food, oh gosh, you better watch out. You're going to lose your head. Church was a requirement for continuing to breathe on this planet. My dad took church super seriously. So to say that me and this little boy butted heads is like the understatement of the century. There were so many times during this time that I wanted nothing more than to just walk out of that house, leave him there, walk down the street to the local dealer, and drown out his yelling in a pipe. Like, staying clean those first few years while I was trying to raise this kid that hated me, that was one of the truest tests of willpower, the power to overcome and reshape your mindset, and the strength of the tips and tricks that I learned while I was in treatment. So I want to share one of those tips and tricks with you today. Like I said earlier, it's called playing the tape out. So for this exercise, it will be difficult. I am not going to sugarcoat it. It sucks. If you've never done this, if you are in treatment or in recovery for drugs and alcohol or fresh out of treatment, they probably did this with you. But you can seriously use this play the tape out method for any change that you want to make in your life. So what it entails is you get in a quiet place, get somewhere private, because you are digging up the most deep, dark, dirty secret of your problem behavior. I want you to think about the absolute worst time where your problem behavior or problem habit affected you. So if you're doing this for drugs and alcohol, it's going to look like your rock bottom. The worst experience that you had that left you shaken to your core. If you're doing this for like weight loss or eating healthy, I want you to think of when you felt the crappiest, when you felt the most embarrassed of your body. Maybe it was when you were required to wear a bathing suit for something with your family and you realized that you'd put on 30 pounds. If you're doing it to try to save money, I want you to think about the worst thing, like when you were the most broke and you needed or wanted something and didn't have the money for it. I want you to visit that time, the stress, the emotions, the way you felt, the way your body felt. Did you have an upset stomach? Were you crying? Did you feel shame? Did you feel embarrassed? How did the people around you react? How did you react to their reactions? So you're really going to dig deep. And essentially what you're doing is remember, I'm going to date myself here, but remember in the 80s, 90s when I was in the 90s, baby, I was born in the mid 80s. And so my childhood was the 90s. But when you would put the VHS tape in the tape player and then you could hit fast forward and it would play the video really fast and you could watch it in like 45 seconds. Okay, that's what we're doing. We're going to create the tape of your behavior, of your problem behavior, whatever problem it is that you're trying to overcome. And the deepest, darkest, ugliest place that it's taken you. And so you need to make that video, make that movie of that experience so real and so tangible that whenever you're tempted to give in to temptation, you can go back in your mind and play that tape and fast forward for yourself and remind yourself of why you don't want to give in to that temptation. So for me, it is being a drug addict, homeless, on the streets, not knowing where I was going to get my next meal from, literally picking up change in the parking lot to be able to get a $1 cheeseburger at McDonald's, and couch hopping from one friend's house to another. That's what kept me clean from meth. That's what helped me remember why I got clean to begin with. For drinking, it was being a total mess. So this sweet little boy that I was raising, his dad and I ended up together, and we had my daughter. And for a short while, I had the privilege of continuing to raise that sweet boy. And then their dad went to prison, and I was suddenly a single mom in college. And so he went to go live with his paternal grandparents, their paternal grandparents. And sadly, he ended up in foster care, or he was eventually adopted by the neighbor. And I continued to be a big part of his life. My daughter, his baby sister, they were so close. Like, they loved each other. His adopted mom was fabulous and let us be a part of his life. And in 2020, he died by suicide. And so, sorry. That was one of the hardest things I have ever been through. And if you know me at all, I have been through a lot. I've lost a lot of people in my life, and that one shook me to my core. This little boy had become my son. He had become a part of my heart. I called him my son all the time. He was like my kid. So losing him was one of the hardest things that I ever went through. And in the aftermath of losing him, I found myself drowning in wine, literally drowning in wine. And for me, when I stopped drinking, I realized when I created the tape for myself for drinking, I played back the tape of my daughter grieving and me not showing a good example of what grief looks like. And instead, I would go sit in the backyard, literally on the side of the house where nobody could see me. And I would just sit there and I would drink and I would cry. And I don't want to process emotions that way. I want to process emotions in a healthy way. I want to show my daughter that you can experience the biggest loss of your life and still come out on the other side whole and a little different, but filled with so much joy for having loved that person to begin with. And so for me, that was my tape. That was what I played when I started trying to stop drinking. Was I reminded myself that I didn't want to show other people. Let me take that back. I wanted to show other people that there was a different way to process hard emotions. I wanted to show people that loss does not mean being drunk. That loss doesn't have to be processed through whiskey goggles. Loss doesn't have to be drowned. Loss doesn't have to be pushed down and not dealt with. loss should be dealt with, and loss should be faced head on. You should feel the emotions. You should feel the hurt. You should feel the anger. You should feel the pain, and just let it wash over you so that you can move forward and help someone else process their grief and loss. So that was my tape. It wasn't all totally negative. I also had some of those positives of like reminding myself of why I was making the change. And so that's part 2 of playing the tape out. So part 1 is going to the deep, dark, ugly, twisty place that your behaviors have taken you to. Part 2 is the light and the bright. So this is where we're going to talk about why you're making the change, the positive things that you want to see come out of the changes that you're making. So that's part 2 of the tape. So when you get tempted to use or go back to that problem behavior or spend too much money or not read your self-help books this month, whatever change. I am not belittling anyone's change. Everyone's desire to change and work towards change is a big deal, and I'm proud of you, whatever change it is that you're trying to make. But so when you are tempted to give up on the change, I want you to play the tape out, the negative part, right? This is why I'm not giving in, because I don't want to go back to where I was. And I want to move into this new light area, this new light, bright place in life. And so that's part 2 of playing the tape out, is almost like hitting rewind and being able to go back to the front of the movie and rewrite what the outcome is. And so those are the 2 parts of play the tape out. I hope that it will help you. I hope that you can use it to help yourself make some changes, some lasting changes in your life. I'm so proud of you. Whatever change it is that you are trying to make, you can do it. You can do it. I promise. It'll be hard. It'll be tough. But you can do it. You can do hard things. Who says that? Glennon Doyle? We can do hard things. Is that right? Somebody will have to comment and let me know. But yeah, we can do hard things. You can. And just remember that your brain is naturally going to choose the path of least resistance. So when that rears its ugly head, this is me reminding you that you can change your mind. You can change your habits. It takes practice, it takes routine, and it takes establishing new neural pathways in your brain. And that happens by repeating the same thing, the same new behavior over and over. So for my drinking friends, what this looks like is when your normal routine was to pop a bottle of wine as soon as you got home from work, maybe instead you go to the fridge and you pull out a lime and slice it up and pour yourself a glass of club soda with a splash of cranberry and a wedge of lime instead. I put mine in a wine glass. It feels fun. It feels fancy. It feels like that break in between work and home. It's kind of a reset button, and it's virgin, so it's fine. But yeah, and I've done that so many times that the routine of going to the top of the fridge for the box of wine, because we're fancy and we get box wine, that is no longer a habit for me. Instead, my habit is to reach for something healthy. Reach for some kombucha or sparkling water, or maybe just a glass of water. So that by repeating that action, I've trained my brain that it doesn't need to reach for the box of wine anymore. So anyway, couple tips for you. Change your routine, play the tape out, remind yourself of why you're making these changes. So I want to thank you for tuning in today. I hope that today's episode taught you at least one thing, and I hope that it helped you to see that you were made for more than merely surviving. You were made for thriving. Crumbs are for the birds. You were made for the feast, and don't forget that. I had a friend actually tell me that something about that this weekend. She had someone tell her that you weren't made to survive on the crumbs. And that really struck a chord with me for you guys, because I feel like as recovering addicts, we tend to think that we are less than, or that society will shun us if they know our story. And I just want to tell you that you are a survivor, you are a fighter, you are an overcomer, and you were made for more than crumbs. So don't forget that. For more information on our 6-week course, which I have not mentioned in a while, this is a 6-week course, and it is called Cultivating an Abundantly Fulfilling Life by Reigniting Your Passion and Zeal for Life. I'm really excited. If you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen bits and pieces of this course on my Instagram. But what we do is we go through a section called Remember When, and just really remembering like what brings us childhood joy, and then reincorporating those things into your life by using a schedule and a plan that takes your family dynamics into account, because I think all too often we get gung-ho about making changes and we find like the perfect plan on Pinterest and we have it saved on our phones and we're bound set and determined that this is what we're going to do. And then it doesn't coincide with our family schedule. No, you can't get up at 6 o'clock in the morning because that's when the kids have to be up to get ready for the school bus and, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, you're not ever starting because the plan didn't work and you've given up. And so that's part of this course, is actually making a plan for change that works for you. And then we kind of go through a little bit of everything, of exploring the past, breaking some chains, healing some things of the past, so that you can have the true emotional freedom to cultivate an abundantly fulfilling life. And then we round out by just learning about living intentionally and intentionally pouring into your mind, body, and soul. So if you are interested in that, you can text COURSE, COURSE. I'm probably going to misspell it. That's COURSE to 806-317-8181. That's 806-317-8181. And I will shoot you over information on that course. If you want to dig in deeper each week and create your own personalized roadmap to cultivating an abundantly fulfilling life, then hop on over to our Patreon page and become a Rebel VIP today. So as a Rebel VIP, you get a companion episode to each episode that drops each week. So that companion episode is going to dig in deeper into that week's episode, podcast episode. And it takes the episode to a next level. So you'll have exclusive access to like worksheets, printable content, journal pages, and other useful information that will truly help you to begin to cultivate an abundantly fulfilling life, and actually take the things that I talk about in the podcast episodes and be able to apply them and make them and personalize them to yourself. So it'll be handouts. It'll be more in-depth worksheets. It'll be another video where we talk about it further. So if that is of interest to you, you can visit our website. It's rebelandreawakencoaching.com/links. And that's where you'll find information on everything we have available. Again, it's rebelandreawakencoaching.com/links. And for the Rebel VIP, you will click on Rebel VIP. Okay, so last but not least, if this podcast is making an impact on your life, please share it. You can subscribe on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel where we show my beautiful face. So if you'd like to see my face, you can go over to the podcast channel. It's Rebel and Reawaken podcast, I believe. Sorry, I don't have all my ducks in a row, but you can, you can see that over there. Basically, if you just look up Rebel and Reawaken, you'll see all things related to this podcast and my coaching services. If you have a second, please screenshot the episode, share it to your social stories. I will be forever grateful for each and every one of you. I hope that I pour into you as much as it pours into me to be able to do this for you. So as always, be well, be kind, and may you find some joy this week. Bye.